"I'm not worth much, sir, but I can cook." The words came out dry and cracked, like the desert ground beneath my worn boots. I stood before the ranch house with my hat crushed between my fingers, watching the big man on the porch consider me with eyes the color of storm clouds. He was called Emmett Callahan. Everybody in the territory knew his name. He ran the Double C Ranch, 3,000 head of cattle, and enough land to make a man dizzy just thinking about it. And here I was, a 53-year-old drifter with nothing but the clothes on my back and a lifetime of regrets trailing behind me like dust. "You look half dead," Callahan said. "Not unkind, but not gentle either. When's the last time you ate?" "Tuesday, I reckon. Found some scraps behind the hotel in Baxter Springs." It was Friday. Callahan stood there a long moment, his arms crossed over his barrel chest. Behind him, I could hear the sounds of a working ranch, horses nickering, men calling to each other, the clang of a hammer on iron from the blacksmith shed. "What's your name?" "Henry Phelps, sir." "You got a history, Henry Phelps?" I swallowed hard. There was no point in lying. Men like Callahan could smell a lie the way a hound smells a rabbit. I spent 8 years in Yuma prison. Got out 6 months ago. His expression didn't change. "What for?" "Killed a man." I watched his face for the disgust, the fear, the dismissal. It didn't come. He was beating his wife to death in the street. Nobody was doing nothing about it. So I did something that sounds more like justice than murder. The judge didn't see it that way. Man I killed was the mayor's brother. Callahan uncrossed his arms and stepped down from the porch. He was taller than I'd realized, broad-shouldered, and solid as an oak. He walked around me slow, taking my measure the way a man might inspect a horse he was thinking of buying. "You say you can cook?" "Learned from my mother before she passed. She worked in the finest homes in St. Louis. Then I cooked for a cattle outfit up in Montana for 7 years before I trailed off, before everything fell apart. Before I lost my temper and my freedom, and every good thing I'd ever built. My cook broke his leg last week," Callahan said. "Horse threw him into a ravine. He'll be laid up for months, maybe permanent. I got 23 hands who need feeding 3 times a day, and right now my foreman's wife is doing it. She's about ready to shoot every last one of us." Hope flickered in my chest, dangerous and fragile. I'd learned not to trust hope. It had betrayed me too many times. "I'll work for food and a place to sleep," I said. "You don't have to pay me nothing until you're satisfied I can do the job." Callahan studied me another long moment. Then he nodded once. Sharp and decisive. "Kitchen's around back. Cookie's wagon is parked by the bunkhouse. You'll find supplies in the storehouse. Supper's at 6. Don't make me regret this." He walked away before I could thank him, which was probably for the best. My throat had closed up so tight I couldn't have spoken anyway. I found the kitchen, and I got to work. My hands remembered what to do, even when my mind was foggy with hunger and exhaustion. I made biscuits first, the kind my mother used to make, light as clouds and golden brown on top. Then I put together a stew with beef and potatoes and carrots, seasoned with herbs I found growing wild behind the storehouse. I made 3 pies from dried apples and molasses, the crusts flaky and buttery. When the hands came in for supper, they looked at me with suspicion, a stranger in their midst, old and weathered, and clearly down on his luck. But then they tasted the food. A young cowhand named Billy was the first to speak. "Lord Almighty," he said, his mouth still full of biscuit, "this is the best thing I've eaten since I left my mama's house." They went back for seconds, then thirds. They scraped the stew pot clean and fought over the last slice of pie. And when they were done, several of them came over to shake my hand. That night, I slept in the cook's wagon, wrapped in a clean blanket that smelled like sage and wood smoke. I cried for the first time in years, not from sadness, but from something I couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or just the overwhelming feeling of being useful again. The weeks passed. I cooked 3 meals a day, and I put everything I had into each one. I learned the hands' names and their preferences. Billy liked his eggs soft. Old Sam couldn't eat onions on account of his stomach. The foreman, a quiet man named Dutch, had a weakness for peach cobbler that I indulged whenever I could get my hands on fresh peaches. One evening, Callahan came to the kitchen while I was cleaning up. He leaned against the doorframe and watched me work for a while before speaking. "You've been here 2 months, Henry." "Yes, sir." "The men would riot if I let you go. Dutch's wife sent me a letter thanking me for hiring you. Said it was the smartest thing I've done in 20 years of marriage to her sister." I kept scrubbing the pot in my hands, not trusting myself to look at him. "I want to make this permanent," Callahan said. "Full wages, and there's a cabin by the creek that nobody's using. It's small, but it's solid. It could be yours." My hands stilled in the water. A cabin. A home. I hadn't had a home since before Yuma. Since before everything. "Mr. Callahan," I said slowly, "I told you what I did. What I am. You told me you protected a woman when nobody else would. That's not what you are, Henry. That's what you did. What you are is a man who makes the best damn biscuits in the territory and who's never once complained about the early mornings or the hard work." He paused. "What you are is someone who deserves a second chance." I finally looked at him. He was watching me with those storm cloud eyes, and there was something in them I hadn't expected. Respect, maybe. "Thank you," I said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. Callahan nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with the dishes and the fading light and the strange, wonderful feeling of being worth something after all.